The Flying Reporter YouTube channel is supported by our friends at Anglian Flight Centres at Earl's Cone in Essex. And this episode is sponsored by AOPA UK, representing the interests of aircraft owners, pilots and general aviation businesses. In this episode, I'm going to fly the new RNP approaches at Sherburn in Elmet, the first uncontrolled airfield in England to have RNAV procedures. Welcome to the Flying Reporter. The RNP approaches at Sherburn Aero Club in Yorkshire finally went live in June 2023, and I've been invited along to try them out. Sherburn is an uncontrolled airfield with just an air-ground communication service. For my viewers in North America and other parts of the world where GPS approaches are commonplace, even at uncontrolled airfields, it may surprise you that Sherburn in Elmet is the first uncontrolled airfield in England to have an RNP approach. And it's taken the club here nearly 8 years to get approval from the UK CAA. What's more, there are a whole host of rules pilots have to follow if they want to fly them. Steve Hallis is from Sherburn Aero Club.
The initial requirement is you read the pilot brief. Once you've read the pilot brief there, you can then phone up and ask for a slot time, so you have to have a slot time. The slot times are every hour, and they are shared with Leeds East. Because of the gliding activities around here, we've agreed that we won't do training approaches on Thursdays, Saturdays and Sundays, which is when Burn fly. They don't start before 10, so we can actually pop a couple in before 10, and they generally finish at 5, so we can pop some in after that, and we coordinate with them. And for a proper RNP, the cloud base needs to be 1,200 foot or below, and we also have training slots. You still need a slot time, but that training can take place in VFR with a Sherburn approved safety pilot.
To understand why all this is necessary, I suppose you have to first know a couple of things about UK airspace. Firstly, we have a privatised, disjointed, uncoordinated air traffic service in the UK, pretty much set up to serve the commercial airlines, the jets that fly us around on holiday and so on. For lighter aircraft, general aviation aircraft, mostly flying in uncontrolled airspace at the lower levels, we put up with what's called a lower airspace radar service, and that is a very piecemeal service. There are significant gaps in that provision, and at the weekend that situation gets even worse, quite dire in fact, because a lot of the military airfields that provide this service end up closing their lower airspace radar service at weekends, and there are huge gaps in the country where you can't get a radar service. And Sherburn in Elmet is in a gap, even when the services are up and running. It's in a gap here where there is no LARS service, no radar service at all. There is Humberside to the east, which provides a lower airspace radar service, but we're right at the edge of their provision area, and Sherburn in Elmet is technically outside of their area. There is a commercial airfield to the west, that's Leeds Bradford Airfield, just 16 miles to the west, but even though they've got radar, they are not technically required to provide a lower airspace radar service because we don't pay them to do that. In my experience, if you call up Leeds Bradford, they will often give you a service, but it cannot be guaranteed, it cannot be relied upon. So you can see here that we've got a gap in our radar provision, so the chance of getting traffic information on other aircraft in the clouds is quite difficult. And then when you throw into the mix the fact that in the UK, which is unusual, we can fly in uncontrolled airspace in IMC, IFR, without a clearance and without even talking to anyone. We can have the radio turned off if we want to in uncontrolled airspace in IMC. So as you can see, all of these things put together means that there is a greater risk of a mid-air collision. Add into the mix that Sherburn is a busy VFR training airfield, the fact that it has a conjoined ATZ with Leeds East, which also now has instrument approaches in uncontrolled airspace, and you can see why there is an abundance of caution in respect to how the new instrument procedures can be used. I'm going to fly the RNP 10 approach to Sherburn in a moment, but first the club's Deputy Head of Training, Steve Fletcher, helps me brief the procedure. So Steve, we're going to be flying the RNP 10 approach first of all. Looking forward to this.
Right.
You've flown it before, haven't you? You've flown it once
I have.
already.
I've only flown it once, yeah, and it seemed to work out okay.
Okay. So tell me what we can note from this plate. We're looking at the top of the chart here at the moment.
Well, the MSA is obviously down to the southwest here, 3,500 feet. You can actually see the high ground starting up here to our leads.
Yeah.
On the left there. We've got the AD elevation and a few things at the top and the frequencies. As any other approach plate, all the information we need up there. Coming in from where we would normally come down from the south here, we have to be careful of the TAA, so we can descend at this point here down to 2,900 feet. And then within 10 miles of Ulpug, which is the initial approach fix, we can come down to 2,000 feet. And you see there the 2,000 feet at Ulpug, max 150 knots.
Now that's important, isn't it? Because this is, we would, if we hadn't descended below 2.5, we'd be in the Class D here. So we need to make sure we make that descent. I think that's a bit of a gotcha, actually.
It could be a gotcha, yeah. Or if you wanted to stay higher, you'd have to get a clearance from Leeds Bradford.
Excellent. The other thing I noticed on the top of the chart is the transition altitude.
Yeah.
Now that's unusual because it's quite low, and it is below our missed approach procedure. We'll come on to the missed approach in a minute, and also our MSA.
Yeah.
So what should we do? Are we going to be flying on an altitude or a flight level if we're going up that high?
Well, I'd be on an altitude personally. Stay on an altitude, yeah.
Just thinking about some of the hazards around here. We've got the high ground, but we've got ATZ, gliding, lots of things going on.
We've got quite a bit of stuff going off. Like you say, you can see there quite clearly Leeds East. We've got Burn just to the southeast of us, which is up to 3,000 feet gliding, winch launching. We've got Breton out to the east, about 10 miles maybe. They do aerobatics up to whatever height they want to be doing them. So there's quite a few things around the field. And it's also a very busy airfield as well. It's busy for training, it's busy with private pilots, busy with visitors coming and going.
So if we're flying this in VMC, we've got a lot to look out for.
We have, We've got to keep our eyes and ears open at all times,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And pretty standard descent profile of, 3.5 degrees or so there.
Yeah, that's right.
And we've got a step down from the intermediate fix to 1,500.
1,500 feet to the final fix,
Now, look at that. We can see the missed approach track on there. I'm going to scroll down to the missed approach in a second, but that's quite a cross-country little route there.
It is.
Let's go down to the missed approach part of this then. Run us through the missed approach.
Yeah, so we can see the approach there quite clearly, taking us down to our missed approach point, which is at the runway edge there. Minimums would be using is 600 feet QNH. And then we got this missed approach point there for runway 10, continuous climb to 3,500 feet. Initially climb straight ahead to CJ MO4 and then turn right to CJ MO5. And it's basically following this all the way around to the end of the missed approach, which is Mbit, to the northwest there.
And I guess that's because we're avoiding the Burn gliding site.
Yeah.
We're avoiding Leeds East. So we've got to go all the way around there. Yeah. Quite a lot of turns in a short space of time looking at that.
Yeah, there is. It's like I say, it's quite new to us. We've done it. It works well. Yeah. But you have to be ahead of the game. You have to be thinking ahead all the time.
Excellent. Well, should we go and fly it?
Yeah, let's go fly it.
Clipper up! God, I'm feeling a bit nervous now, Steve.
No, don't, just enjoy it, mate.
I'm at 70.
Flying straight over the little wooded area there. We can go straight south.
Oh, that's a bit murky, isn't it? Or is that?
Yeah, no, it's all right. It makes it a bit more realistic, doesn't it?
After taking off from Sherburn in Elmet, we position ourselves to the south before changing frequency to Leeds radar, which is mandatory for the RNP 10 approach. On this approach, Steve, we have to talk to Leeds Bradford. We have to.
Yes.
And that's why is that?
On 10, because of the close proximity to their airspace, they could inform us of any traffic that might be around the RNP area.
Right.
So they won't give us any separation.
But they want to know we're there.
Yeah.
That's because they sometimes descend their instrument traffic into the area we're going to be flying. Leeds radar, Golf Bravo Mike India Victor on the RNP 10 approach to Sherburn in Elmet, altitude 2,500 feet, request a traffic service.
Station call, just say again the full call sign.
It's Golf Bravo Mike India Victor.
Golf Bravo Mike India Victor, squawk 2673, and capacity details.
2673 is the squawk, Golf Bravo Mike India Victor, PA28 Arrow, Sherburn to Sherburn. Position is 13 miles southeast of Old Park, altitude 2,500 feet, VFR. Intend to carry out the RNP 10 procedure via Old Park at Sherburn in Elmet. Request a traffic service.
Golf India Victor, report your level, lead QNH 1022.
Level 2,500 feet, QNH 1022, Golf India Victor.
Golf India Victor, identified traffic service on terrain clearance below sector safe altitude.
Traffic service, my terrain clearance, Golf Bravo Mike India Victor.
Golf India Victor, to confirm you will be maintaining outside controlled airspace.
Affirm, Golf India Victor.
Roger.
So we've decided we're going to do the procedure now, and we're going to do the 10 procedure. So like on my rather ancient 430 here, I'm going to hit procedure, select approach, enter, RNAV 10,
Yep.
enter. We're going to go via Old Park,
Yep.
enter, load.
Yep.
Next, I activate the approach and track towards Old Park. Steve and I rebrief the plan and descend to 2,000 feet after passing the 10-mile point to Old Park. I check with leads whether they can see any traffic on the procedure before requesting a frequency change to Sherburn radio. Victor, we're changing to Sherburn now, 122.610.
Golf India Victor, Roger, squawk conspicuity there, bye for now.
Squawk conspicuity, Golf India Victor, and our code is 5077, yeah?
Yeah.
One of the conditions of flying the approach is that we squawk the conspicuity code 5077. We won't be told to do that, we have to remember to do it ourselves. The conditions are because it's a non-standard instrument approach environment. There are also rules around who can use the procedure.
So who can use the RNP approach? Is it just reserved for Sherburn Aero Club members? Or?
No, far from it. We actually want to make this available for any IRR pilot or an instrument rated pilot. And we're quite keen for that to be used by external pilots. It's certainly not home-based pilots. It does need a safety pilot, and if it's training, and that safety pilot, we say approved, it's a briefing that they need to sign, which lasts a year. But other than that, anybody can actually come and do it. As far as the real RNP, if the cloud base is below 1,200 foot, we don't give approvals in the air. You must do it before you take off. But you can come and fly it if it's below 1,200 foot and do a proper RNP, and there's no safety pilot or anything. In general, the gliders are not flying then on our circuit, traffic isn't there, so the issues of deconfliction virtually disappear.
It's important that before commencing the approach you're in contact with Sherburn radio, squawking 5077, and have obtained the aerodrome information. Sherburn will pass you unofficial weather information. Sherburn radio, Golf Bravo Mike India Victor is 3 miles from Old Park. Intend to carry out RNP runway 10 approach. Height, altitude 2,000 feet. Request aerodrome information.
Golf Bravo Mike India Victor, Sherburn radio, RNP active, runway news 24 left. The unofficial weather at time 0934 Zulu. Surface wind variable 3 knots. Visibility 9,000 metres. Present weather nil. Overcast 3,500 feet. Temperature +17. Dew point +15. QFE 1022, QNH 1023, and the circuit is active.
Roger, circuit active on runway 24, left-hand circuit, QNH 1023, Golf Bravo Mike India Victor.
Oh yeah, 1.5 miles to go, just under.
Unusually, no one is going to clear you to commence the approach. So long as you've complied with the conditions in the pilot brief, you're good to go. When at the instrument approach fix, you're required to report this along with your altitude. The next calls are at the intermediate fix, final approach fix, and a 2-mile final. Golf India Victor, Old Park, 2,000 feet.
Golf India Victor, Roger.
So maintain this altitude now
Yeah.
until the intermediate fix.
Correct.
So we've got 1 mile to go, and at the intermediate fix, we'll make the turn and can descend down to 1,500 feet. Yeah.
Correct, yeah. Lovely.
Next turn is 103.
Then to 103, there you go.
So at this point we don't need to give the altitude.
No, just the position and then start your descent.
Right. Golf India Victor, intermediate fix.
Golf India Victor, roger.
Right to the right.
Down we go.
That's 1500, isn't it?
Yeah.
One thing I noticed with the RNP approaches at Sherburn is that some of the legs are quite short. This can result in you getting a bit behind the aeroplane and the procedure. For example, I barely descended to 1500 feet when I reached the final approach fix.
Given we've only got a mile, I'm going to get the gear down and prepare for the... so we're within gear speed now. Got 3 greens. Just going to have enough time to slow up for the flaps.
Yeah, that's good.
And we're at the final approach fix now, flaps coming in. Golf India Victor, final approach fix.
Golf India Victor, roger.
So we want about 580 per minute roughly.
Yeah, your ground speed is 104, so I'll call it 100 for cash.
So brakes, undercarriage is down 3 greens, mixture, fuel, landing lights. Altimeter we're on 1023.
So it's slightly high. At 3 miles we should have been 1180.
Right.
2 miles 810.
So we'll increase to 700.
Golf Charlie Romeo, landing up for departure 24.
2 it's 810.
Yeah, the gotchas if you get too busy.
Yeah. To be fair, I probably should have configured earlier. That's a good point. In the intermediate fix would be a good point. So at 2 miles, we're just over the height.
You're going to be perfect.
Call it 2 mile final. Golf India Victor, 2 mile final, runway 10.
Golf India Victor, roger.
We're flying the RNP 10 approach even though runway 24 is in use at Sherburn and Elmet, and that's just for the purposes of this training video. Ordinarily, reciprocal approaches will not be permitted. The rules for using these RNP approaches state that the circuit traffic has right of way, and so as I reach my minimum descent altitude, I go around to avoid a conflict.
I'm going to go around. We're on the RNP approach runway 10, going around range 1 mile.
Roger, that's copy.
You happy with the traffic situation?
Yeah, we are, yeah.
There's quite a lot to do there.
There is.
Especially with the circuit traffic active.
Yeah.
You have multiple runways here, and you have a busy circuit often, right? So how are you going to make this training work when the circuit is active and maybe the approach is to a different runway to one that's in use?
For the training, it has to have an approved safety pilot or instructor, and the reason for that is that they need briefing, and we need a morning briefing to make sure that everybody in the system knows that there's an RNP occurring. We also restrict the number and type of traffic in the circuit, so there's no first solos when an RNP is booked, and no more than 2 aircraft in the circuit. And obviously the brief pilots can communicate between themselves and the RNP aircraft to make sure that there's no conflict.
So a mile to go until the crosswind leg.
We're executing the missed approach procedure. It's a requirement of the procedure for us to report crosswind when making that turn on the procedure.
Turn now.
Now we're above the VFR overhead joint traffic. So still keeping a good lookout, but we should be safe the higher we get now.
Golf India Victor, crosswind.
The only other mandatory call is when we've completed the missed approach procedure.
Golf India Victor, MBIT, RNP 10 approach complete, now returning to the south of the field to rejoin. Golf India Victor. Well, that went well. I enjoyed that. That was nice to have a play with that.
Good.
This episode of The Flying Reporter has been sponsored by AOPA UK. AOPA has been working behind the scenes to help improve access to RNP approaches in the UK. They've lobbied for more RNP substitution of traditional approach aids and have challenged the government on its decision to pull out of EGNOS, which, as you know, caused the end of LPV approaches in the UK. A lot of AOPA's work goes unnoticed, but they really do fight our corner. I'm a member of AOPA, Sherburn Aero Club is a corporate member, and if you value the kind of work AOPA does, why not sign up yourself? Right now, Flying Reporter followers can get a 25% discount on new 1 or 2 year memberships at AOPA UK using the QR code or link on your screen or the link in the video description.
I'm going to activate the approach.
The RNP approaches at Sherburn in Elmet are only here because of a seismic change in attitude and approach at the UK's aviation regulator. Steve Hallis understands the CAA's cautious stance, but praises them for finally helping to make it all possible.
If I'm honest, although people criticise the CAA, they haven't asked me to do anything that I actually can't see the reason for. It's like the Met. I mean, we had to train everybody for the Met, but you can imagine somebody coming in from Europe and listening to an air ground person that literally is, a little bit in need of a little bit more training, and to think that they're giving the weather for them to come in and be going low level into an aerodrome. It really does need to be controlled better than just an ordinary air ground saying, oh yeah, it's raining or it's not raining or the viz is and a guess. So they've not done anything that I actually don't think is necessary. And I'm not a big lover of politicians, far from it. But from when we first started, the CAA were regulators. We don't give advice. Just tell us what you want to do and we'll tell you whether it works or not. Shapps actually turned that round.
Grant Shapps, the former Transport Minister.
I have to say he did a fantastic job in turning it round, where they were far more proactive. And in the last couple of years, I would compliment them significantly for their approach for this, even though it was frustration. One step forward and three back at times, but the people that we've been dealing with have been absolutely excellent.
Do you think this is going to set the ball rolling now? And let's hope it doesn't take 7-8 years for the next approach to come online. Maybe it will be 3 years or 2 years. In 2 or 3 years' time, will we see lots more of our GA airfields like you with air to ground? Obviously, people have got a template to follow now, which we didn't have. But I would like to think that in a few years' time it would be certainly a lot simpler. But will there be a lot of them? The cost will be the issue. The amount of time that's put into the documents and the various parts of it, I think will be costing around £100,000. And whilst it was stated that there was no ongoing costs, the CAA have a 5-year review, and I'm told by the providers of the ones that do the ACPs that is almost a full ACP again, and that they're looking at sort of £100,000. Now, if that's that sort of level, if it's 50, you're never going to make that money back, are you?
No, and we won't pay it. Yeah. We won't pay it. It will fold. And I've been speaking to the CAA about that. For about 18 months, not had a reply, and the people that were originally involved in it are no longer involved in it. So it's a conversation I'll be having now that we've got it, to try and make that 5-year review more realistic, because to have an ongoing review costing that amount of money every 5 years, none of them, when you've only got 1 hour slot times in a day, and you're sharing it. Even Leeds East, where they're having commercial aircraft coming in, they won't be able to afford that either. But for now, let's celebrate a step forward. Well done to Sherburn in Elmet and for the CAA for getting this one over the line. I ended my time at Sherburn flying the RNP 28 approach. Once again, I got a little bit behind the aeroplane, but it was slightly easier of the two approaches in my experience. If you want to see the full unedited video of that approach, it's available now as a bonus video on my Supporters Club channel. Sign up via my website. And don't forget to sign up for your AOPA UK discount. But I shall leave things there for now. Until next time, fly safely, my friends.